Washington hope that the attention that sexual harassment is getting will give them a better chance to be heard on the issue. We begin at the White House with ABC's Britt Hume.
Clarence Thomas, with his wife at his side, appeared at the White House this afternoon for a meeting with the president, where photographers but no inquiring reporters were admitted. The meeting was intended to show Mr. Bush sticking up for his nominee, but without sticking himself in the middle of a nasty battle over a politically explosive subject. Mr. Bush earlier put it this way.
Any question you ask me is going to be answered. I support Clarence Thomas, and there's no wavering, there's no condition, and that's where it is, and that's the way it's going to stay.
But as for the charges and the Senate proceedings where they'll be aired,
I think it'd be counterproductive for me or for the White House generally to get involved in this process. And I would be involved if I started asking a wide array of questions that understandably are being asked.
But wait a minute, a reporter asked. Hadn't presidential spokesman Fitzwater already said Thomas was being smeared? The president passed that off lightly.
I've told you my answer, John. I'll continue to back Marlin most of the way.
When the reporter persisted, though, Fitzwater did not take it lightly.
That's what was said by Senator Danforth and others last week. Do not try to come in here with false accusations. Thank you very much.
It was not a false accusation, but talk of smears is something the White House doesn't want the president involved in. Such restraint did not apply to other Republicans today.
And, there's clearly a brass knuckles, totally unfair process of brutalizing presidential appointees.
Privately, the president shares that view, but as long as there's a chance to save this nomination, don't look for him to say so. Britt Hume, ABC News, the White House.
Judge Thomas's chief sponsor in the Senate, John Danforth of Missouri, said Judge Thomas will look the American people in the eye and deny that he sexually harassed his former employee, Anita Hill. The forum for her testimony and his denial will be that meeting of the Senate Judiciary Committee to begin on Friday, and which could last into the weekend. Judge Thomas, Professor Hill, and 2 other witnesses are being subpoenaed. It's not known who the other witnesses are. On Capitol Hill tonight, ABC's Jim Wooten.
At his suburban Virginia home, Judge Thomas met with his chief Senate defender, Republican John Danforth, to hear the ground rules for his last and perhaps most critical appearance before the Judiciary Committee. The hearings will focus exclusively on sexual harassment. Committee Chairman, Democrat Biden.
We are going to ventilate this subject to give both Professor Hill the opportunity to make her case in full and give the nominee his opportunity to state his defense in full.
And should others raise the same complaint against Thomas, Biden may allow their testimony as well. But whatever is said and done in those hearings, senators on and off the committee for and against Thomas are now hearing charges that they've all handled this matter quite badly. Not so, said Senate Democratic leader Mitchell today, defending Chairman Biden's role against questions raised by the press.
No, I do not believe Senator Biden, as you put it, dropped the ball. I think he handled this in his usually effective, fair, and responsible manner.
I would do the exact same thing again. I do not believe the ball was dropped. It's an extremely difficult question to balance the rights of an individual who alleges to have been victimized and the rights of the institution.
But Democrat Herbert Kohl of Wisconsin, after meeting with other Democrats on the committee, did concede that perhaps Professor Hill's charges might have been taken more seriously when they were raised.
Yes, if the composition of the committee or composition of the Senate were different in terms of gender and race, we would have different outcomes in different situations. I think that's true.
And, said Senator Kohl, whatever may have happened, there is now an attempt to make up for past insensitivity.
If you want to say better late than never, I certainly think that might be true.
And so far, that's about as close to a mea culpa as has been offered by the United States Senate. Jim Wooten, ABC News, Capitol Hill.
This whole debate has a particular edge in Washington, in part because no other city has a higher percentage of women in the workplace, namely the government, dominated by men. Here's ABC Sheila Cast.
In the House today, women started pushing a bill aimed at equality in the workplace. The legislation has been around for 10 years. But some women believe it has a better chance now that allegations of sexual harassment have won center stage. Not only did 7 women members of the House march on the Senate to lobby to have the Thomas vote postponed, but thousands of women from across the country called to make the same argument.
I think America's women really want to see this body start doing something for them than to them.
Women legislators today said the Senate's vote to delay could be a turning point in women's issues.
Women, for the first time in my lifetime, have said we are players in this society and we intend to stay that way.
I hope that the women realize now that they have a stake in their government, that they can move government, that they can move legislation if they involve themselves.
But women still need men to vote with them. And women in Congress complain many of the men around them don't get it.
It was not too long ago that a colleague of mine complimented me on my appearance and then said that he was going to chase me around the House floor. Because he wasn't my boss, I was not intimidated, but I was offended and I was embarrassed.
The House is going to vote soon on a bill requiring employers to give parents time off to care for sick children. Whether there will be enough votes to override an expected presidential veto will be a test of the women's ability to translate their anger over sexual harassment into real voting power. Sheila Cast, ABC News on Capitol Hill.
As you surely know, no matter where you live and work, the attention given sexual harassment in the workplace this week has provoked a particularly strong reaction from women. For one thing, it's encouraged many employers to take a more serious look at the issue. Some men may be confused or even ignorant of what sexual harassment really is, but not as many women are uncertain. Here's ABC's John McKenzie.
Ask about sexual harassment, and you can find different perspectives from the different sexes.
For me personally, sexual harassment would mean like the act of touching, physical contact.
Sexual harassment is like words or expressions and stuff like that that is not supposed to be done in the office or anywhere for that matter.
It could be the look. It could be if he or she has touched you. It could be many things.
Federal guidelines say sexual harassment is creating an intimidating or hostile or offensive environment, interfering with an individual's work performance.
Mel always has the nicest gals working for him.
It does not have to be a physical touch or a specific threat. Companies now produce videos explaining it can be any unwanted sexual advances, displaying sexual material, or telling dirty jokes. Employees are warned that situations which may seem humorous to some can seem harassing to others.
I'm sorry. I'll be out of your way in just a minute.
Don't hurry. I'm enjoying the view.
The last time the federal government polled all its workers, 42% of the women reported they had been recently sexually harassed, but only 6% of them formally complained.
Women understand that it's very difficult and that they will likely be blamed, and their lives will be made very difficult and miserable on account of their coming forward and saying sexual harassment is wrong and this sexual harassment in this instance is wrong.
Melba Scoggins understands the consequences of coming forward. For 22 years, she scheduled buses for the Atlanta Transit Authority. 4 years ago, her supervisor began phoning her and writing her and showing up at bus stops asking for a date. When he wouldn't stop his advances, Scoggins sued. The company settled out of court. Since then, the Transit Authority has promoted the supervisor and reassigned Scoggins to a lower-paying job.
My attorney kept saying after it was over, and, you know, you won. But I didn't feel like I did because I wanted that position. I liked it, and I wanted to stay in it.
Unlike the Scoggins case, in the Thomas case, as far as we know, there are no witnesses, no physical evidence. It is the most difficult kind of sexual harassment case and the most common. His word against hers. John McKenzie, ABC News, New York.
Despite all the differences in the way some men and some women interpret sexual harassment, there's broad agreement across the sexes on at least one aspect of this current debate. We conducted a poll last night. 63% of the people we asked said that if the charges against Judge Thomas are true, the Senate should reject his nomination. As you can see, the response among men and women is almost identical. In a moment, the other news. The federal government has approved a second drug for treating AIDS. The Pentagon is looking for cuts in the National Guard. And finally this evening, the umbrella as art.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Brought to you by Ford and your Ford dealer.
Sales reports are in, and guess what?
Ford is the leader in total truck sales for the 6th straight year. And Ford full-size pickups are #1 14 years in a row. We also make the best-built American trucks. Do you understand that? You understand why we stay #1.
More people are driving the best-built, best-selling American trucks than ever before.
Mice. For everyone you see, there may be 15 or 20 that you don't see, and they eat in many different places. A very unhealthy situation. But put Decon Mouseproof in the places mice feed, like behind the refrigerator, the cupboard, the washer, and you'll eliminate them faster. Decon Mouseproof gets mice right where they live.
You know what my favorite country is? Country Scent Lysol Disinfectant Spray. It's all the power of Lysol spray in a fresh country scent.
The government has approved a new drug for the treatment of AIDS. It is called Didanicin, but it's known as DDI. It is only the second AIDS drug to win government approval, particularly important to those people, about 250,000 Americans with the AIDS virus, who have a bad reaction to the drug AZT. Here's ABC's George Strait.
DDI was approved in record time, 180 days, a year before long-term tests on humans are completed. There is no hard evidence that DDI prolongs life, only tests that show the drug enables certain cells of the immune system to fight off the AIDS virus. But FDA investigators say when those cells are strengthened by other drugs, AIDS patients live longer.
In the case of AIDS, in the case of life-threatening diseases, one can accept greater risks and even greater unknown risks if there are potentially great benefits.
Like AZT, the only other drug approved for use against AIDS, DDI slows down the spread of the AIDS virus in the body.
It is not a cure. There is much work to be done, but it does give patients a choice.
Bristol Myers Squibb, which manufactures DDI, says the drug will cost an average $2,000 a year. That's $600 less than AZT, but still expensive considering the company didn't develop DDI. The government did.
I think it's a reasonable cost and responsible cost based on our investment.
Approval of DDI means it will no longer be available for free to the 8,000 AIDS patients getting it experimentally. But in an unprecedented move, the manufacturer is offering to continue providing the drug to those patients until they can get insurance to pay for it. George Strait, ABC News, Washington.
The federal government said today it will not appeal a court judgment awarding $3.8 million to a Marine who's being treated for AIDS. Martin Gaffney got the disease from his wife after a Navy hospital gave her a transfusion of blood infected with the AIDS virus. Gaffney's wife and his son have since died because of AIDS. On Wall Street today, the Dow Jones Industrials lost another 17.5 points to close at 29.46, and the trading was heavy. General Motors is recalling more than 500,000 Chevrolet cars for possible safety defects. One recall involves 1987 and 1988 Chevrolet Corsicas and Berettas because their front hoods might pop open while driving. Also being recalled are Chevy Corvettes made between 1984 and 1991. Their seat belts could lock up or jam, making them impossible to use. We'll be back in just a moment.
These are remarkable cars, and I've left all this space to show you why. First, Dodge Spirit and Plymouth Acclaim are the lowest-priced six-passenger cars in the world, even with an airbag and all the goodies you see here. But okay, you want to spruce it up, so you start adding options, air, automatic, four-speaker stereo. When you're through, you'll find that Spirit and Acclaim, with all this, are still the lowest-priced six-passenger cars on the planet.
Now, get a warranty choice no other manufacturer offers.
Ace is like a neighbor who can do everything.
Well, almost everything.
All you got to do
is ask Ace.
Yeah.
Peak antifreeze is just $3.99 a gallon, and a 30-inch Ames Green Sweeper lawn rake is only $4.88.
Hey, Ace is the place for me.
Right, neighbor.
Here's a sweet idea for breakfast.
Try Sunsweet Prune Juice for a change.
It's naturally sweet and delicious.
Sunsweet Prune Juice adds no sugar.
It's perfect just the way it is.
Remind you of anyone?
Not really.
Look what's popping up at Free. Special K waffle from Eggo. Once you see how good Fat Free can be, oh no, you never let go.
No way. It's all mine.
Special K waffle from Eggo.
Eggo Special K waffles. Crisp, delicious, yet every bite fat-free, cholesterol-free, and just 80 calories per waffle. See how good fat-free can be.
Oh, no, you never let go. Nah. Special K waffles from Eggo.
In the Middle East today, there's been another encounter between Jewish settlers and the Palestinian population. The settlers tried to stake another claim in predominantly Arab East Jerusalem. Some Israeli politicians say the settlers were trying to undermine the Bush administration's effort to get a peace conference going. Some of the Jewish settlers do not disagree. Here's ABC's Dean Reynolds.
The Jewish settlers moved into more than 20 dwellings overnight. They said they bought some of them and seized others that had been abandoned. But Israeli police said the settlers had double-crossed them by moving in after promising not to. So they evicted most of them, saying they were threatening public order. Palestinian Jamil Abbasi came home this morning from a wedding to find his home was no longer his. And he and his neighbors were out of luck when the police sealed the dwellings until their ownership could be proven. The Israeli Housing Ministry, headed by Ariel Sharon, defended the settlers' action, saying it is the right of Jews to live anywhere in Jerusalem. Several Israeli lawmakers were there to cheer the settlers on. Some of them were hoping this would hinder Secretary of State Baker's peace efforts, knowing how the Arabs oppose Jewish settlement.
If it will help the Baker plan, so that's another good thing that they are doing.
Last Friday's Israeli reconnaissance mission over Iraq was another action that could threaten Baker's efforts. Today, officials here rejected White House criticism of the flight, saying Israel always does what it has to.
It will take the measures necessary so that it can exercise its legitimate right of self-defense.
Privately, one Israeli official said Bush is pushing us into a corner. So, as they often do under pressure, the Israelis are pushing back. Dean Reynolds, ABC News, Jerusalem.
Elsewhere in the region, Iraqi troops and Kurdish guerrillas have fought each other for a fifth straight day. The battles are taking place in and around the Kurdish city of Sulaymaniyah. Tens of thousands of Kurds have left the area since the fighting began on Saturday. Still overseas, in the Philippines, President Corazon Aquino has offered to let Imelda Marcos bring home the body of her husband, the former President Ferdinand Marcos, but only if he's flown directly to his home province. Mrs. Marcos has turned the offer down. She says she'll only return with him if he can be buried in the capital, Manila. In a moment, military cutbacks and the future of the National Guard.
Come on and nutritize your body. Come on and nutritize your mind.
Want to change your old size for a Nutrisize? Call your Nutrisystem Center. We'll teach you how to develop a whole new relationship with food.
Nutritize your life.
Nutrisize now and lose all the weight you can for the price of a 10-pound program. Call 1-800-321-THIN.
If you're looking for a great vacation, I've got just the place.
In the morning, in the evening, ain't we got fun? Not much money, oh, but honey, ain't we got fun? The food is great here, there's never a bill. So stay up late, dear, let's not miss a trip.
Take a 3, 4, or 7-day fun ship vacation on Carnival, the most popular cruise line in the world.
You've just poured yourself a bowl of Kellogg's Crispix. When?
Hello? Mom, what a surprise. Well, actually, my cereal's sitting in milk.
When will you get back to your Kellogg's Crispix? It's anybody's guess.
Uh-huh. But they wouldn't give your money back?
Fortunately, Kellogg's Crispix stays crisp and delicious in milk.
Sure, Aunt Helen didn't mean it that way.
Even if you can't get to it right away.
Uh-huh. Still crispy. You're absolutely right, Mom.
Kellogg's Crispix, the taste that waits for you.
Have you had your V8 today? Did you know that V8 juice has less than half the calories of that apple?
Wow.
Did you know that V8 has more vitamins A and C than that tossed salad?
Wow.
And did you know that V8 is 100% vegetable juice, so it has no fat, unlike that low-fat yogurt?
Wow.
So how do you feel now that you know these things? Wow, I gotta have a V8. V8 is a nutritious blend of 8 vegetable juices that taste terrific. Have you had your V8 today?
Another look tonight at the U.S. military now that the prospect of war with the Soviet Union seems such a remote possibility. One of the consequences is a real opportunity on both sides to spend a good deal less on defense. For the U.S., the single largest chunk of the defense budget is the money spent on manpower. And so that's where the Pentagon is looking to cut. ABC's Bob Zelnick tonight on the case of the National Guard.
The airmen of South Carolina's Army National Guard are practicing how to intercept invading aircraft. Efficient training like this has enabled the unit to consistently match or exceed the performance of regular Army units.
Guard 68986, roger, report X-ray inbound.
And they do it for less than a third of the cost of those units because they are only part-time soldiers.
It's more of a benefit to the national taxpayer to have units like this if the budget gets tighter, because we're a cheaper commodity than the active forces.
But maintaining large combat reserves, including the National Guard, runs counter to the Pentagon's view of how the Army should be restructured. With little danger of a long, intense war in Europe, the new emphasis is on more mobile forces able to respond very quickly to smaller crises. That role is more easily filled by active duty units because it takes time to mobilize the reserve. And so the Pentagon wants to cut Army Reserve and Guard units by about 25% over the next 5 years. That would save $12 billion. The Pentagon says the reserves can be used most efficiently for behind-the-line support, while active duty forces remain ready for combat. If that approach prevails, units like this Apache attack battalion could well be phased out. Pentagon officials point out that in the Gulf War, reservists in non-combat roles and those with special skills like pilots performed well, while heavy combat units like the 48th Infantry Brigade were only ready to go there as the war ended. Still, there are those that argue against major cuts in the Guard and Reserve. They point out how useful they can be to local communities and how their paychecks and facilities would be missed.
So you're taking away some of the economy of that individual town. We're in a recession now. This is not going to help get us out of the recession at all.
At this point, Congress appears likely to restore most of the Pentagon's recommended cuts. Joint Chiefs Chairman General Colin Powell says that money will come at the expense of active duty forces and equipment.
You affect training, readiness, quality of life, and you're on the way to hollow force.
Maybe not a hollow force, but the Pentagon will have to make cuts somewhere. Even with the Soviet threat all but gone, Powell's theories about new force structures have trouble competing with something real and tangible like the National Guard. Bob Zelnick, ABC News, Columbia, South Carolina.
On the subject of changing times, in Moscow today, the Soviet government formally recognized two of its former Baltic republics, Estonia and Lithuania, as independent nations. Diplomatic recognition of Latvia is expected soon. There are still hundreds of thousands of Soviet troops in the Baltics. The Soviet commander there says he cannot bring them home just yet because there isn't enough housing for them. In Yugoslavia today, a ceasefire, the 8th since fighting broke out between forces of the Croatian Republic and the National Army 3 months ago, seems to be holding today. In Moscow, the Soviet Foreign Ministry said Croatia should negotiate its way to independence rather than simply declaring it outright and then fighting to try to make it stick. We'll have our final report in a moment.
I'd like to have a word with you, and that word is and. It's a word you don't hear much if you're spending less than 10 grand on a car, unless you're looking at one of these. Dodge Shadow America and Plymouth Sundance America give you an automatic transmission, and air, and a stereo, and a driver's airbag, and the owner's choice protection plan. And they're the only cars that give you those ands, and 50 others for under 10 grand.
Now, get a warranty choice no other manufacturer offers. Because some aches and pains don't go away when the lights go out, we've created new Tylenol PM, specially formulated with extra-strength Tylenol pain reliever for those aches and pains that can keep you up at night, plus a gentle ingredient to help you sleep. So you can wake up refreshed in the morning. From the name you trust comes new Tylenol PM, so you can rest easy.
It's the one. The only Red Lobster Fest. It's the only time each year when we serve up lobster a dozen luscious ways. Our most delicious lobster at our most delicious prices. But only now during this special event. It's the one, the only Red Lobster Fest. starting at $8.99.
Red Lobster for the seafood lover in you.
Now, try lunch on Sunday. Most items $4.99 or less.
Tonight on Nightline, it can be hard to prove, tough to measure, difficult to define. Sexual harassment. What is it, and do men and women define it differently?
Finally here this evening, Christo is back. Surely you remember Christo. Christo's done so much to make himself unforgettable. Couple of clues: running fences, covered islands, draped canyons. His latest creation is called simply the Umbrellas, joint project for Japan and USA. Here's ABC's Judy Muller.
At first light, they opened up to the sun like so many yellow flowers. 1,760 to be exact, scattered over 18 miles of California's Tejon Pass. A bit earlier, 1,340 blue umbrellas blossomed in rice paddies north of Tokyo. The project was 6 years in the making. But is it art? That's a familiar question for Christo, who says he wants to challenge traditional definitions of art and reality.
The project is so absurd, it's so irrational that tilted all our so-called justification or moralization of our lives.
Something for commuters to ponder if they should get stuck in umbrella gridlock. On a normal day, 58,000 cars travel this stretch of Interstate 5. Christo has agreed to pay overtime for the California Highway Patrol, which expects an even greater crush with the influx of art lovers and art critics.
It forces you to look. It forces you to look and think and just see things fresh and new.
Rearranging the view, as well as our perception of art, is nothing new to Christo. This is the man, after all, who draped a curtain across the Colorado Valley, erected a running fence in Northern California, wrapped gold fabric around the Pont Neuf in Paris, and surrounded islands off Florida with pink plastic. Umbrellas is Christo's most expensive work so far, costing the artist $26 million of his own money, raised through the sale of his paintings and drawings. The umbrellas will remain standing for only 3 weeks.
This project addressed something once of a lifetime. I will never wrap a bridge again. I will never surround islands again, and there will be one umbrella.
Impermanence, says Christo, is part of the beauty, like the brief life of a flower. Judy Muller, ABC News, Tejon Pass, California.
Refreshing. That's our report on World News Tonight. I'm Peter Jennings. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
Wednesday, what if Marty and Hannah were teenagers?
I'm not leaving here without doing something. Listen, you're not going to start taking off your clothes, are you? Because I'm just getting used to seeing myself naked.
It's the time travel fantasy on Anything But Love, followed by Good and Evil, Wednesday.
Coming up next on Channel 2 News, police question a Portland woman about her cross-country odyssey with a 13-year-old boy.
A Chehalis teenager speaks out after he's sentenced for plotting to kill his parents.
Police find a missing patrol car and a suspect who may have been stealing the vehicle.
And we'll meet a woman who is blind but has her sights set on achieving excellence.
Channel 2 News is next.
Some furniture stores use the word free a lot. Free delivery? Who's paying for that driver, truck, and gasoline? Free credit. The finance company is charging somebody interest. You don't suppose those charges are hidden in the price you pay? I wonder. Well, Levitt's is having a moment of truth sale. Nothing's free. But we do offer the biggest selection, lowest prices, and quality service. Come to Levitt's Moment of Truth sale and see for yourself.